busy. So thank you so much for making the time to come out and listen to me go on and on about my work. I'm really humbled that you all came out, and I just want to thank you for that, and thank you so much for hosting me. Sarah, thank you for coordinating. Robin, thank you for introducing me to the program. I'm glad that we're able to make it work this year. And to Greater Austin Clay. I have a bit of a hybrid show for you tonight. I'm gonna show you some slides of my work. I'll share a little bit of my history, so you know where I'm coming from, and then I'll slide through different bodies of work, and then we can finish off with a demo and take a look at some finished pieces. I brought in some finished pieces for you guys to take a look at too. My relationship with clay is kind of long and complicated. I started off with clay. I identify as a sculptor, but as I go, I identify more and more as a ceramic sculptor. I started off with clay in high school. It felt like home. It was one of the first mediums that I started to work with that just really felt like home and that I really loved. And I continued on with it in college and moved to Hawaii. I studied it there. And at the time I was really young and not very serious about school. I moved around a lot for a few years, and partying was real social. And it wasn't until my mid-20s that I started to really, say, okay, I'm gonna commit to something and, get a degree and all that stuff. I was in Austin at the time. I went to UT, I got a bachelor's degree there. And I really still gravitated towards sculpture, but I dabbled in a lot of different kinds of materials. The subject matter usually dictated whatever materials I worked with. At the time I was really into, exploring gender and what it meant to be a woman at the time. And so I worked a lot with nail polish and plastics and things like that. And then I exhibited for a while after I graduated, got into a graduate program in the Northeast at the Rhode Island School of Design, narrowed my focus on sculpture, but I was still playing around with a lot of different materials. But that was a really important juncture because I was able to take courses at Brown at the time, and I did an independent study with a professor there, and she fed me a lot of reading materials, and that really helped me find a lot of new subject matter to pull from. And at the time I was really missing home, surprisingly. I thought I was going to move out there and start this new exciting life in the Northeast and move to New York City eventually, and then I just got there and I missed the open landscape, and I missed space, and I missed family and my friends, and my heritage, and while all this was going on internally, this professor that I was working with, she passed along this book called Borderlands, and it was this woman wrote about Meso American mythology and about how that tied in with her current experiences personally. And I thought, what a wonderful idea! I would love to do that using the language of sculpture. So that was an important juncture because I still continue to do that today. And after I moved back, I started to work back to Texas. That is, I started to work with clay again. Start my slideshow finally. I moved back to Texas. My personal life took a front seat. I got married. I had twin girls, and it was time to start making again after being in the mom cave for a little while. And I started to mine myth again, and I wasn't sure where to start, but I thought I'd start with the idea of conception and creation, because for the first time I had made something without using my hands and my intellect and my eyes. I just had to rely on body wisdom, and that was you know, phenomenal experience. And so I started to mine creation myth, I was offered a fellowship and an exhibit at Dimension Gallery. I don't know if any of you have heard of that. It's closed down now, but it's a small gallery on the east side of Austin. And that was the first body work that I made with clay after a really long time. And the body work is called Lullabies in New Language. It was one of the first successful pieces. There were a lot of, I had to get to know clay again all over. This is one of the first pieces that, successful pieces that I felt that I made. This is called Cherry. It's kind of a reference to creationists that have to do with unicorns. I was interested in unicorns because it had 2 girls, and I thought, you know, wonder if they're gonna get interested in that, like a lot of little girls do, we'll see. So I kind of, you know, I tried to morph this very seed-like, womb-like form with this unicorn horn-like formation, and I lined the inside with hair. And I put this tiny skull inside the French call the orgasm, the little death. So I put this tiny little skull inside as a kind of like, you know, potential for creation.
Were we supposed to be able to see the skull?
Hmm?
Yeah,
Were we? Oh.
Yeah, it's on the inside. It's on the,
it's just dark.
Oh.
yeah, it's on the inside. It's really tiny.
You gotta be
Oh.
right in it.
It's the image to your
That's it.
bride.
Only women can see it.
Are we allowed to look?
There's a process shot. She said only women can see it. I don't know if you guys heard her in the back. Yeah, I started to use balloons as an infrastructure, which other people do. So here's a little process shot. I was using porcelain. I wanted really white clay. I didn't glaze these. I put them raw. Here's another piece that came out of that body of work. This is called Mythologies of the Future. Again, working off of the idea of the unicorn horn. This is all ceramic material right here. This is neon. So, you know, I pull a lot of my other materials into my work and other sculpture skills into my work. So, it isn't always just ceramics. I pull other things in. Here's a process shot. Some of you at Fireseed lived this and saw this happen. So yeah, I built an infrastructure with PVC piping. I had a carpenter help me build this podium right here. And then I also collaborated with some people that construct neon to make the neon part. There's another process shot, just a closer view of the podium that it stood on. And these, the ceramic part, it slipped onto the PVC pipe kind of like a koozie. And it's, I can't remember how many pieces it is. I want to say it's maybe 5 pieces. It stands, with the neon, it stands at about 6 feet. Here's one more piece from that series. This is called The Garden, and it's based on the Garden of Earthly Delights. So then after that, I made a Leviathan series. I was very much feeling like there was a lot to my creative process that was kind of lying dormant still. And I also at the same time had an opportunity to show with Icosa Gallery, which is a gallery that's still going now. It's at Canopy. They switch out shows every 6 weeks or so. I helped pull that organization together, and it's really strong. And part of being a member of that organization is you get a 2-person show every exhibition cycle. So we had a pretty large space, and that was something to grow into. The gallery I'd shown with before was pretty small. Even though it was a solo exhibit, it was a pretty small space. So I was growing into that, and just became really obsessed with things that are unseen or kind of lying dormant beneath the surface. And so I started to research leviathans, and found a lot of material. I found biblical stories. I found political symbolism, sci-fi. There's a lot about leviathans. This is an installation view. I made several pieces and I coalesced them into this collection of pedestals. These were still made in porcelain, but they were glazed with honeydew dipped glaze. Here's a close-up of one of them. This one's called Leviathan. It's based on a very old creature that's, it was around, I want to say like 8 million years ago, really large. I put gold-capped teeth in these creatures. I kind of imagined that they were very predatory, and I lined them with fur on the inside. So again, I add other materials to my work. Here's a rendered skull of a Leviathan they're around 8.8 million years ago. An old whale. I think they're classified as whales.
How big is that?
That's a good question. Bigger than a person. And that's just the skull. They could have eaten a sperm whale. That's how big they were.
But your piece was that size too? Like,
No, my piece was
tabletop?
12 by 20 by 13. No.
The perspective made it look huge.
No, this is, and this is not my piece, this is just a rendering of the Leviathan skull. Here's another piece, this one's called Leviathans of Jupiter. It's based on a sci-fi novel.
So when you start your sculptures, is it kind of explorative, the way you get to final shape, or do you kind of sketch it out first, or?
I do a little of both. I sketch things out knowing that I'm probably going to change everything. Same with exhibits, I go in with a plan knowing that it's probably gonna change a lot. I guess I have both a need for control and a need to get lost a little bit, so. This is Rhode, a behemoth that's based on a biblical character. Behemoth was a giant creature, a land creature that was created by God. And behemoth, or Leviathan, was kind of like a counter creature that lived in the bottom of the sea. This is a process shot of that piece, again using the balloons as an infrastructure and rolling out slabs and wrapping them around. I press the teeth in preemptively to get like a good footprint, and I just make it bigger than what the footprint actually takes, because shrinkage. Envy. Some of these pieces were named after emotions that we tend to try to push down or keep under wraps. Another process shot of painting the teeth with gold. This is another process shot. This is all of them. They're in queue to get glazed. I thought that was an interesting shot because they kind of look like seashells or something. And so this brings me to my current body of work, which I'm really excited about. I'm probably going to talk about this work more than any of the other work. So with this body of work, I'm mining Meso American myth again. I think I started really thinking about this work right before everything shut down, or right when everything shut down. I needed a lot of studio time and reflective space to kind of think about what I wanted to make next, because I didn't want to make anything too similar to what I had made in the past. And I knew that I wanted to start mining Meso American myth as opposed to more Western myths. I pulled out of my Costa gallery to give myself more time. And everything was on lockdown anyhow, so I thought, well, if we're gonna go underground, let's go underground and really, get reflective and figure some things out. And at the same time, there was this need to be adaptable. I had to be adaptable with my children, with their education, with my daily schedule at work. Everything required flexibility and adaptability. And I thought, it's probably going to be this way for a really long time, so I may as well lean into that too. I have a feeling that when this pandemic passes, we're still going to be required to do a lot of that, because this is just like a really profound change. So I ran across Nahualism, and it's a indigenous word for, or Mesoamerican word for shape-shifting. And I thought how perfect and kind of interesting for what, all the things that I've been thinking about, adaptive change and that kind of thing. And wouldn't it be nice to be able to easily shift into some, take on other forms. This is one of the first successful pieces that came out of that investigation. They're intended to reference that kind of climax point when something's changing from being one form to another form. So it's not quite what it used to be, but it's not quite what it's going to become. It's like something in between. So these are meant to look a little bit human, a little bit animal. And I started to also tie in things that were more closely associated to my body and my belongings. So, the fur that's in these pieces are taken from vintage clothing that I don't wear anymore, jackets that I don't wear anymore that I'm kind of taking apart. This is a freestanding piece. Sometimes I dye the fur, and this one, again, like they all reference a different animal. So this one's in the middle, transforming into a snake, or that's how I like to think of it. So in this piece, I started to incorporate fabric as well. Like this, you can see like a little bit of, in this close-up shot to your right, you can see a little bit of a scarf tucked in there. So these are things that I've either grown out of physically or symbolically. So like, I really associate this scarf with one of my best friends that I don't talk to anymore, but that's another story. That's tucked in there, and more and more I'd like to add more fabric, jewelry, really personal items. Here's a process shot. So I roll out really big slabs of clay. Fire Seed has a really large, wonderful slab roller. It's a lot bigger than this one, and it connects to a long table, so luckily I'm able to roll out really large slabs. And yeah, this is just a process shot, so this piece is this piece in process. Another thing I ran into, I had to switch clay bodies with this because I was using a different porcelain, and I was finding that I was getting some cracking, and the clay just didn't wanna withstand all the trauma that I was putting it through, because I fold these big slabs over onto several balloons, and then after that I twist it, I contort it, I bend it, I squish it together, and I had to find the right clay body that would withstand all that trauma and like heal from all the things that I was putting it through. So I'm using the cone tin bralette, which I get from Armadillo. Here's another finished piece. This has some horse teeth in it, an old skull that I carried around for a long time. I acquired it in El Paso when I was living there. Gosh, I think I got that skull in El Paso when I was right before I moved back to Austin, so that must have been 2009. No, 2010. Here's another process shot. Again with the balloons, and sometimes I incorporate the horns. I have to, kind of do a lot of planning if I'm going to incorporate things like horns and teeth. That's the same piece but finished, which I also brought in with me today, so you can take a closer look at that one later if you'd like. This one, I dyed the fur for this one too, and it's just taken from a collar from a jacket that I'm still harvesting fur and fabric from this jacket. I wanted to bring one of these freestanding pieces in, but one of the galleries that I showed with still has it. So I've exhibited this body of work a couple times, once in Houston and then once here at Women in Their Work. They put on this wonderful pop-up exhibit called Clay Matters, and it was, I think, 5 or 6 of us, and it was all clay work. So yeah, I've exhibited it twice. This one's called Chupacabra. It's one of my favorites, but I think I'm alone in that. Nobody's asked me for this piece yet. But it's kind of near and dear to me because it stems from a more current story about shape-shifting and alcoholism in more of like a Mexican American storytelling. So if you aren't familiar with Chupacabra, that's a creature that can change. It's a person that can supposedly change into a dog or wolf-like creature, and they're known to break into people's land and suck the blood out of their livestock and things like that. There's some really some dark stories associated with that. I like to think of it as like the Mexican werewolf, This piece has a big bullhorn in it. It references this old set of longhorns that I took apart. I had them for quite a while, maybe like 10 years. Somebody gave them to me before I left to go to grad school up in the Northeast, and I kind of saw them as like, I was taking a bit of Texas with me, and I used to hang my jewelry on them, and a friend of mine took a picture of me sitting in front of them. And I don't have a lot of pictures of myself, so I use this picture for a lot of things for a long time. But, I came back to Texas and I stopped using them. I guess I just didn't need a little piece of Texas anymore. So now they found their way into my sculpture. I wanted to show you guys a couple pictures of my current process. I'm continue to unpack and expand on the Nephrolism theme. And I'm bumping up my scale, and as I said before, integrating more and more of the personal items. That was always part of the plan. So I'm making bigger pieces in sections. This is a studio shot of one bigger piece that's made out of two small ones. It'll hang on the wall like some of the other ones. This is the same pieces fresh out of the kiln after they've been glazed. I don't know if I mentioned, but I brush these glazes on. I don't dip them. I wanted something kind of simple and something that looked glossy and wet, like it was kind of in the middle of transforming. So these are stroke and coat. And this is me just kind of composing and figuring out where things are going to go and how things are going to come together. The coat that I told you I'm still harvesting material off of. This is a part of that collar that I'm in the middle of dyeing, and this is like, it had like a satin lining. So I'm going to work that in, and I'm going to start carving foam to give fabric a backing and give it some shape. And this piece is intended for Ivester Contemporary. I have an exhibit coming up there in December, so you're all invited. And I thought it would be fun if this is a quick video of my process, and it's time lapse, so it'll take us just 30 seconds. If this doesn't work, I'm going to do a demo anyhow, and this video can be found on my Instagram page. So let's see if technology is on our side tonight. Are there any questions before we slip into the demonstration?
How do you get the balloons out? Do they burn out?
I try to get out as many as I can. I pop them and then I pull them out. But for pieces that are really closed off, if I can't get it out, then it burns in the kiln.
That's a good
Pressure clay, very wet. And you didn't have to score and slip any of that. It was wet enough to just press it together.
I score, what I do is I lay out the entire slab and I score the whole slab, so I don't have to think too much about where they're gonna meet. And then I fold it down over, kind of like an empinada, like a giant empinada. And then I sometimes I'll add slip if it feels like it needs it. I usually do. And then I trim and contort and bend and like that. Yeah. But I do keep the clay body really wet. Like I'll sponge it down. And I try to get it as smooth as possible. I like a really slick, smooth surface. So. Yeah.
You talk about what you use to adhere the fur onto the porcelain.
I use an epoxy, a heavy epoxy. Yeah, and then the horns. The horns sometimes I'll kind of preemptively drill a little hole into the clay so that I can add a screw with a little nut and a bolt. But then I'll also epoxy that to make sure it doesn't shift around too much. Because I really don't want it to go anywhere.
You talk about the successful pieces,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't seen too many unsuccessful ones come out of the kiln. So, so what rate do you lose pieces, or do you just decide not to use a piece?
There are a lot of pieces that I just, I decide not to use. I went through a phase of cracking. I think you remember that, don't you, Rick? You remember my cracking phase, yeah. And then I had to switch to bodies because I was like, this just isn't working.
Yeah.
And then I think I've broken a couple pieces trying to get them into the kiln. So that was a whole puzzle to figure out. How do I get this into the kiln, So yeah.
So when you're working with the horn and the teeth and the fur, is that something that you have in your head before you start, I'm gonna use these pieces, or is it something that you think, oh, right here, it would be cool if I put a tooth? Or is it kind of a combination?
That usually comes before. It kind of has to because it's hard to make those elements work after the fact. Because I have to think about shrinkage.
But like when you're like, have you like sketched out exactly what you think is
Yeah.
gonna happen before you even start making? And
Yes.
that's gonna be in it, okay.
Yeah, so I sketch things out beforehand, and the horns and the bone, it's just such a fixed material in itself that's something that there's not as much wiggle room with it because I have to plan for that, and there's some tact involved. So yeah, but sometimes the layout and the composition, sometimes that changes a little bit. Clays, especially the clay that I'm working with now, it's definitely not fixed. It's very malleable, so there's a lot of room for change and twist and in the process. But there's definitely an overarching design that I follow. Yeah.
So you say you're working bigger, and is that because the galleries are wanting bigger works, or you just feel like you're increasing the scale of what you do?
I think that's more me. The space that I was offered is more conducive to something that's immersive. So I also think it would be interesting if these things took on more of like a scale that was closer to human size. Right now they're more animal size. So I think it would be interesting if they were more around 4 feet, 5 feet, more human scale. And I have sketches of building more of like environments, taking it into like an installation type situation, because there's, that I think about, where would these things live, what kind of environments would they hang out in when they're changing.
Kind of like crawl into one, like the furry ones.
Right,
So
yeah.
comfy to take a nap in. Like I would go for a big giant one that I could go crawl inside.
I would love to do that. I was approached by someone to build a big one. It was supposed to be a cabin out in the country, but it never came to fruition. But
Probably have to be like fiberglass or something like that.
yeah, I think I would probably collaborate with architects. If people were going to be inside with something like that, I would want it to be. Yeah, not ceramic. We might have to abandon it. Any other questions for now? No?
Just a comment, I'm amazed at the depth of your thinking and the whole process stuff. I probably watched you make every piece,
Yeah.
and you're real open about it too, so we've had lots of discussions, but I've learned more tonight than I already knew, I feel like. I think that's kind of cool.
That's good. I was kind of, when people that I know are present, I'm like, I hope this is good for them, because they're, if you already know.
It was good for us.
Okay, let's switch to the back of the room. You know, I don't use,
They wanna know what color the
Flesh, like the one on
the flesh color one is.
this is a cashew later. Yeah. And it's just it's a stroking coat. I think we have like a bunch of them over here on this shelf. They're really, I love stroking coat. I mean, it's just 3 solid brushed on coats. They're really stable glazes. They don't move around very much. I get really good coverage out of them.
What are you firing them to?
Pardon me?
What cone are you firing them to?
Mid-fire, cone 6. Yeah. So this is the clay that I use. It's the Grawl Lake porcelain. It's really, really, really soft. Some people hate it because it's so soft. And I can understand it. You know, it all depends on what you're trying to do. Sometimes really soft clay isn't your friend. Does anybody want to play with a piece of clay? Touch it? Like. It's really it's very malleable. It's weird clay. You wanna?
I want to
They want to toss it a couple.
Weird.
It's like a braid.
That's yummy, huh?
It feels like paper.
Kind of gummy, isn't it?
Just like, you know, those things. Yes, that's like the wall tag. It's like the texture.
Did you say this is a cone 10 clay? But you're firing it only to 6.
Yeah.
You don't have to worry about it.
There's a problem going in the other direction. You know, like if I were to try to
Low fire.
Well, yeah, if I put a low fire and a high firing, it would probably fall apart. But
Since it's sculptural, it doesn't have to be functional in water, right?
yeah, it doesn't have to hold water. I'm used to working much bigger than this, but I'm gonna do my best with this slab roller. And is this the? Yeah, I guess this is what we use for white clay, correct? Yeah.
Yes.
There was a yes from the student.
I don't want to be a bad studio mate. Stain something I'm not supposed to stain. Okay. Do that. So I'm going to work probably a little smaller since I have a smaller slab roller here. I'm also going to take this off.
How thick are you going to roll it?
I usually do just like a tinge over 1/4 of an inch. Yeah.
It turned
Does it turn both of
Yeah.
them? Okay. Your slab roller is different. Huh?
Is that Margot Wolf?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. She's great. Okay, so that's quite a bit of clay, but we'll see how it goes. Balloons. These are really great.
Isn't that cheating using the?
Somebody showed me, introduced me to these. Some really smart person.
They have motorized ones too.
Huh?
They have those pumps that you can just do two at once.
Oh, really?
Just plug it in.
I don't have a grand plan for this one. I'm gonna work intuitively.
Now, do your daughters steal your balloons?
Pardon me?
Do your daughters steal your balloons?
They don't, I hide them.
He's probably stealing theirs.
Yeah, I steal a lot of their things. They have a big studio. Their studio's bigger than mine. They have a big playroom upstairs. And yeah, I take their things.
That's why we have kids.
Huh?
That's why you have kids, to take their things.
Yeah. Yeah, the other day I saw they have this giant Easter egg. I mean, it's like this big. And now I use it for to smoke. Yeah, it's a mold for me now.
Have you ever thought of doing like a mold over a balloon animal?
I have thought about that. Yeah, I don't know how to make balloon animals, so I'd have to collaborate with somebody.
I know somebody.
You do? You'll have to connect me.
Yeah, they haven't done it since the elementary school talent show, so.
Oh, wow.
We'll find out.
Yeah, that's funny. I have thought about that. And I even tried early on, I tried to start to get into it, and I was like, no.
But like,
This is a distraction. This is not. So I usually, I make a bunch of different sizes. Sometimes using really small ones is fun. But the more variation in size, just like the more interesting the piece comes together in a more interesting way. And I'm putting them over there because they just like fly away. Alright, hopefully these balloons aren't so old that they just like fall apart. Sometimes balloons do get old. I'm gonna go ahead and wedge right here because the wedging table looks like it's in use. So. Ooh, it's sticky. Since I have a short table, I'm gonna try to make it kind of wide. I don't have a lot of length there. Let's see. Got this to go.
So for those that are not hand builders in here, can you explain what you're doing?
Yeah, right now I'm just I'm wedging the clay, getting a lot of the air bubbles out. And I'm also shaping it up and getting it ready to run through the slab roller. And you know, little things to take into consideration are that whatever you're making, whatever, you know, you're gonna need your slab to be a specific size and a specific shape. So you have to take into consideration how the slab roller works. It stretches the clay long ways, so it's important to start off with a width that's gonna work for your piece. So if I were, for example, gonna be folding over a really big balloon, and I'm not working super big today on purpose because this slab roller is kind of small, I would want to make sure that I had enough width to fold over my balloon. And sometimes I intentionally leave, you know, an opening, and that's okay because I like to add other materials, and I think openings are interesting. But those are just, you know, things to take into consideration. Super stretchy. Okay, I think that's about all I've got here. That looks about right. Yeah. Okay. So most studios have, you know, they'll have like fabric for white clay and for brown clay. Like down here, there's a basket full of canvas for brown clay, and I'm making sure that I'm using the fabric for, is this done? Is this done? I'm using the fabric for white clay. So that the next person that comes and uses this doesn't get a stain of the opposite kind of clay. I need to sandwich it between the fabric. Really small. And then you roll it through. There we go. That is nice and tight. All right, there we go. Sometimes I carry my piece over on the fabric just to keep from ripping my slab.
You only do one pass?
Pardon me?
You only do one pass?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, this is good. So then I work with a lot of water, and I usually wet the entire surface, and then I score the entire thing. I don't like to score after I put the balloons on because I don't want the teeth to pop my balloons. So I just score the entire thing, and that way I know wherever I'm matching my clay body up that I'm getting that zipper effect. I'm getting, you know, I'm interlocking. See how malleable that clay is. So it's nice and sticky because it's wet, and that helps a lot. That does help a lot with the balloons because they love to float around all over the studio. But the water helps them stick. I don't know if I'm gonna use that big balloon because the slab is really tiny. So. As I said, I don't have a grand plan, but. That there. This here. Okay. So now, after I have them where I want them, it's a matter of folding over the slab and usually I would have like a really long slab and I would have a lot of room to play with. There would be more space between my balloons, which would allow for more cinching and bending. But I still have some space. I can still do some contorting here. Fold that over. I usually use slip, but water works really well too to keep things held together. So I run a little extra in between. I just make sure that that's really starting to stick together. Like I said, I usually like to use slip just to be kind of on the safe side, but today I'm using water. I've used water in the past and it works well too. I'd like for these two to close together too, so I'm gonna press that down. Just have a pretty funky empty knob I hear. A little snappy.
Mm-hmm. It's a little snappy.
Yeah. It does look like a sugar snap pea.
Do you ever get problems with the balloons deflating?
By the time, they do deflate over time sometimes, but it takes them such a long time that by the time that happens, it's already past leather hard and, yeah.
What about the shrinkage of the clay and the balloons not deflating?
I've never had problems with that. I do pop them, but they're on occasion I have, for whatever reason, I go out of town and I forgot to go and pop the balloon. I haven't had problems with them shrinking and cracking. The balloons have a little bit of give, so they're really ideal infrastructures because of that reason.
Do you just make a hole through the piece to pop the balloons if it's fully enclosed, or?
I usually work my way through the openings. Most of them have openings. Some of them don't, like the snake pieces. Those are so kind of folded over in on themselves and kind of coiled together that sometimes it's hard for me to find a way in, and I'll be able to pop like a couple of them, and the rest of them are kind of trapped in there and they just get burned through the firing cycle.
Have you ever tried to go in from the underside?
From the bottom?
Yeah.
Well, I do have to go in through the bottom if it's going to be a wall piece, because I need a way to hang them. So if I were to flip this over and show you the underside, there would be like a big hole there, and that's what I use to mount them onto the wall. So usually in that case, after I have it pulled together and built pretty much the way I want to. I'll just gently pull it up and carve a hole. I usually use one of my plastic tools because I'm afraid of popping the balloon. I have popped balloons trying to make a hole in the back, and that really sucks. But sometimes they can be salvaged. That happened to one of my really big pieces, and I went back and I quickly, inflated another balloon, and I just stuffed it in there, and it worked. I was able to reshape it and smooth it out. But yeah, so before I start to contort it, I like to get it a little wet. I douse them down with water several times throughout the process. And before I start to contort them, I'll usually trim the edges off.
You don't worry about fingerprints at this point?
No, I don't do the fine tuning with the smoothing until the end, because I know I'm just gonna make all kinds of little indentions. And at this point, I'm mostly worried about keeping the clay wet enough so that it's elastic. It has a lot of elasticity, and I can bend it. So I trim whatever I don't want to be part of my piece, and I can keep this, of course, and use it for other things.
Is there any reason why, is it an advantage to getting the balloon out? Because if you can just burn them, why not just leave them?
I feel better as a person if I get them out. I'm not burning them. Yeah.
Maybe it might be bad for your kiln, right?
I don't think it. What do you think, Rick?
They fire a lot of balloons.
People put a lot of things in kilns. People put leaves, they put horsehair, they put wood shavings, they put banana peels. People put a lot of things in kilns. Salt.
But this is a gas kiln, right? This is an electric.
Electric.
It's electric. Yeah.
Huh. I thought that jacked up the electric kilns. No, it's just I'm new, and I was told that you don't ever put
You're
this stuff
starting
in
to scare
electric
me.
kilns.
We've been firing them for
Ever?
forever.
Yeah.
And they're inside the, they're inside the pieces.
Oh no, I was talking about like the salt and the horsehair and all that stuff I've seen where like on the inside of like a gas kiln where it like crusts up and looks like it's really awesome looking.
Oh,
But
we don't do salt at Fire Seed.
Oh,
But
okay.
yeah,
No, we're not doing that.
Laguna does salt, and I think it is in the gas kiln. So I'm going to start to twist and contort this thing. I just doused it down with water one more time. And this clay it's nice and moist right now. Sometimes if I've had a bag of clay laying around, like I'll get more cracks right here. But again, the Grolic porcelain it has so much elasticity that doesn't turn into a problem. I can easily heal all of that, and it goes away. I will never see it again.
If you use larger balloons and don't blow them up very much, they have a lot more elasticity than if you take a small balloon and blow it up really a lot.
Yeah.
That's where it can cause crack. It pushes back a whole lot more.
What do you plan to use for your larger sculptures? Because I mean, the balloons, regular balloons only come in certain sizes.
A certain
Yeah,
size.
do you have any ideas for?
There are pretty big balloons out there, but I have a lot of, I have experience with a lot of other materials. I'm thinking about, when I get really large, I'll probably move into vacuum formed plastic. There are ways to get
Chinese weather balloons.
I've made sculptures with that, actually. That's so funny. Nothing like this work, but then that was a long time ago. But yeah, I think I would probably start working with vacuum-formed plastic.
What are you saying?
Vacuum-formed plastic. That's like, you know when you buy like a toothbrush and it has like that layer of plastic on it, that's almost the same shape as like the that's vacuum-formed plastic.
Thank you.
So you would use that instead of the clay, is what you mean, or?
For some parts
or
of it,
for some
parts of it, maybe the bigger pieces.
It's like heat shrink or,
Huh?
does it like heat shrink or something?
Yeah, you put it into this big machine. We put like a sheet of plastic into this big machine, and it melts the plastic. And you can either place objects on the bed and pull the sheet of plastic down, and then suck the air out, and it'll conform to the objects that are on the table.
So you gotta know a guy that has a machine.
I need to find a vacuum form machine. Yeah. Yep. So then I just start to bend. And look at that elasticity. I mean, it's just, there's no other clay body that I think I could do this with. Well, not that I know of. And at this point, I'd put it on a wear board. I didn't bring a wear board. I don't see any extra ones anywhere, but that's okay. And if I decided that I wanted this to be a wall-mounted piece, you know, after I got my basic form, I would flip it up a little bit, and I'd grab one of my plastic tools, because those are the gentlest. And I'm the least likely to pop a balloon with the plastic pieces. But I can't find that right now. Oh, cool. Thank you. So yeah, I would, if it were gonna be a wall piece, I would just pull it up and carve a hole in here. I usually fashion just a little square. And then I just mount them with screws and anchors. And if a balloon is going to pop, this is usually when it happens. That hasn't happened to me in a long time, knock on wood. So there we go. I have an opening big enough to hang. Now sometimes if, like this piece is looking pretty close and I just have that one hole, sometimes I'll have to preemptively make sure that there are more openings just so that the thing doesn't explode in the kiln. So there's that too. And then after this, it's mostly fine tuning. You know, finding interesting folds and turning them into what I want them to be. There's a lot of smoothing. Every once in a while I'll keep like the stretch, you know, if it looks like it's stretched skin, I'll keep that. I love this tool for smoothing.
Yeah, it kind of moves a little fleshy too.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever stretched it a little too much and got a pop open spot?
Yeah, that's happened before.
Do you leave it, or do you and work with it, or do you?
Sometimes, if it's interesting, then sometimes I'll leave it, yeah. That's where the where I let go of control and let go of like my original plans. And then also, I have a lot of these really interesting folds here that I didn't foresee any of these, but I like them and I want to keep them and kind of play around with them. That's the kind of thing, little details like that are not the kinds of things that usually will come out in a sketch. I like to use, I have a huge collection of cheap paintbrushes that I have all kinds of sizes in there. And these are just really inexpensive, like Hobby Lobby, Crayola brushes, and I like to use them to smooth out areas that are difficult to reach with ribs and sponges and things like that. And you know what else I love are these. You can get them at Home Depot. These are great for smoothing too, and for reaching places that are hard to get to with the regular sponge. Those are really great. You can find those at any painting place or at Home Depot. And they're very inexpensive. And I kind of like this right here and this right here. Those look like, fleshy stretches, so I'm gonna keep that. It may or may not get covered by the glaze. Another thing that I want to grow into is working up with these. I've made a few freestanding pieces, but I'd like to make more of those, and I'd like to bring them up. So that's another approach that I'm kind of going into. So there might be some more PVC piping in my future. So with this one, I think I'm going to make some more openings. Because while there is that opening on the bottom, there's a lot of, I don't know how much cinching is occurring between this structure here and the rest of this. So I want to make another opening just to make sure that air is flowing all throughout. I'll do that right here.
Terra, as you were working with the stroke and coats, you tried other glazes as well?
I tried the glazes.
What was that Black Mirror one?
Yeah, I was just using a Black Mirror
So
surface.
you found that you really like the stroke and coats?
For this work, yeah.
Yes.
I thought the Black Mirror was great. I didn't talk about that body of work. I did a body of work that was called Black Rainbow, and they were all done with like this hematite looking glaze. I I think that was a Mako,
Was it
a
because-
Mako brush on, yeah.
So in conquering the stroking codes,
Mm-hmm.
to make them look beautifully opaque, as opposed to accidentally opaque in some areas. Are you finding 4 coats, 5 coats? What are you doing?
I usually do 3 healthy coats.
Okay.
Yeah. And generous ones.
And generous.
Yeah, and I haven't had a problem with running or anything like that. They're just really stable.
Do you find that you fire
Yeah, Cone 6, yeah.
and they don't leave their coated black?
Yeah, yeah. I will say that I've used other stroke and coats in different colors, and I don't get as much saturation, and they're not as opaque.
Okay.
I think some of the, I think I tried a blue that was not as opaque and as saturated. You could still see the clay body through it. What else did I use? I want to say a green. I think I tried a green too, and I didn't get as much coverage.
So you have a few that you are just completely happy with it?
Yeah, the black, the cashew later, and the cottontail, which is a white.
White.
It's a glossy white. Yeah.
The best one though was the one that we almost burned the building down because the kiln didn't turn off.
Oh no.
Oh yeah,
Came out
yeah,
beautiful.
yeah. That was the Mako mirror, black mirror.
How was it?
Yeah, and it turned this crazy gold color. It was like streaks of gold and black mirror. It was really weird and beautiful.
We're not gonna do that again, hopefully. It was gorgeous. Glaze.
It was gorgeous, yeah.
So you did the neon with the tower one.
Mhm.
Have you ever thought about putting lights inside of the ones with like the open mouths? Like these?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I would need to find, someone to collaborate again. I don't think that the people that I collaborated with on that are still around. They're the people that make the neon signs next door to the fire seat.
Oh.
I don't think they're there anymore.
I thought they were.
Maybe they are.
I think so.
Okay.
There's also Ion Art over off Radham.
Yeah.
They do a lot of
Okay.
neon.
Yeah.
You can also find like cheap at-home lamp wiring kits too. If you
Yeah.
wanna do like small scale lighting.
I think I've seen Instagram ads for that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, I think neon's kind of come a long way.
Mhm.
Like there's a lot of DIY stuff out there, or at least that's what Instagram says.
Yeah, we've got options.
Yeah.
In the modern age.
Is it cracking? Are you getting cracking on one side?
Yeah. I was saying I wanted to keep that stretch right there. This clay is so malleable that if I wanted to, I could wet that and I could comb over it and it would mend.
It's really nice.
Yeah, it's really nice to have that choice. And sometimes I'll get a lot of that if the clay is just a little drier. If I've had it for a long time and it's been sitting out, I'll get more cracks along. It usually happens right here where I stretch the clay more, and I comb over them and I smooth them out, and I never see them again. It's really nice.
How slowly do you dry your pieces? Do you keep them covered? Do you turn the cover, open it?
Yeah, I let them dry a little bit after I'm finished with them. Sometimes I'll even put them under a fan for like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. I just like to get them dried enough so that when I do cover them with plastic, they don't get, printed on. And if I touch them, I don't want my fingerprints on them. So I do like for at least the surface to get, you know, dry enough that it's not gonna get scathed. So yeah, I'll do that, and then I dry them real slowly under plastic. Yeah.
And is this the extent of your smoothing process? Are you doing burnishing at any point, or is it pretty much
I don't-
done?
I don't do any burnishing. I just smooth out. I get into all these little crevices, and I smooth out with a paintbrush. I try to get them pretty smooth, and that's pretty much the end of the sculpting process. And then you know, they get fired, they get glazed, and then there's a whole other process of, you know, ripping the clothes apart and dyeing fabric and, you know, getting all of these things composed and kind of put together. So, yeah. And I always think that that part is going to go quicker than it does. I always think, you know, oh, I got like so much done, but then, you know, like I'm finishing that bigger piece at home right now, and I haven't made anything, haven't sculpted anything out of clay in a couple of weeks now, and I'm really starting to get, you know, really wanting to get back into the studio and work with clay again, but that other part of the process just takes time, so, yeah.
How long would you leave it covered in plastic before you started it to kind of open to the air a little more?
I usually just let it dry under the plastic completely. I give it a loose cover, you know, I let air circulate in it. I never cover anything real tight unless I want to go back and work on it later. Yeah. And then Rick doesn't want anything in the kiln until it's completely dry, so.
You leave it about a week?
Yeah, it takes about a week. If it's like really humid, sometimes it takes, you know, 2 weeks or a week and a half. So it takes longer than I'd like it to dry, honestly. But that's just clay, I guess. What's that?
In the drying room, like all the great colors right now.
Oh. And they wonder why it cracks.
Yeah, that does, that helps with cracks, like drying slow, it really helps.
Putting all that water on the clay, that doesn't like make it gritty or, no, that particular clay body?
No, this clay body is not gritty. Yeah, it's really fine. There's still some out here if you want to. Yeah, it doesn't have any problem. It feels really doughy. It feels very doughy and very gummy.
Earlier you referred to having some issues when you put it in the kiln. What were those, and how did you resolve those?
So yeah, getting especially the bigger pieces that are kind of long and big. It's tricky to pick them up because they don't have a predictable center of gravity, you know, like it's, some of them are really big in this area and then they get really tiny. So I slide them onto the kiln shelf and then carry the kiln shelf into the kiln, yeah.
I think too, like, if you like sticking weird goobers on your pots like I do, you'll learn, like, if you got a beak sticking out or something that sticks out a long ways, there's ways of, you know, bringing around and attaching it to make it stronger.
Oh, yeah.
And we found in loading them, there would be naturally weak spots that she really got better at, you know, making a bridge across, or, you know, the way that she bent it, it didn't leave a weak spot. That really helped.
Yeah. Yeah, there was really, there were a lot of oopsies with these.
A couple of the early ones, you just look at them wrong and they crack.
Yeah. Yeah. And for a while I thought like they just need to dry really slowly, but that wasn't the issue.
So what was the clay you tried before?
I want to say I tried the Cone 5 porcelain. I want to say I tried maybe the Dillo White as well. And I just got cracking, you know. But yeah, some people really hate porcelain. It depends on what you're doing. It really, really does. It's amazing how what a difference there is in different clay bodies. So that's about the gist of it. You know, the rest of this consists of a lot of smoothing and fine tuning, because I like my work to turn out looking pretty kind of wet and slick. So it takes me a while to get everything smoothed out. And this piece came together really quickly because it's so small and cute.
Do you ever do any sanding either at the bisque stage or even the greenware stage?
No, I don't do any sanding. I've tried to do sanding, but sometimes I've found that I get crawling with the glazing process because of all the debris that's left on the surface. And you can wash your pieces, you know, and then let them dry for a day before you glaze. But it's really easy to get debris. Yeah, I did that with one piece and I ended up ruining it.
What do you do with your ruined pieces?
I throw them away. Sometimes I'll save them to do glaze testing, you know. I think that's always a good rule of thumb. If you make something that you don't like, just hang on to it and experiment with glazes. Because you don't want to do that on a piece that you care about, right? So yeah, I hang on to them for that, and you know, then I throw them in the trash.
This would be weird little things to go find out in the middle of the woods.
Right.
Without the fur.
I've thought about taking pictures of them in landscapes, like in the desert.
Garden art is always a good option.
Right.
Like frog homes and stuff.
My garden.
That's a giant slug.
Yeah. Beware.
Mixed with the bluebonnets.
Oh, that'd be funny.
Do you guys have any more questions?
Are you showing on the studio tour?
No, I'm not participating in the studio tour. I used to participate in the studio tours, but I haven't in a long time. If and when I do, it's usually for an exhibit, not so much. I don't so much open my studio. So, yeah. But I do have, I have that exhibit coming up at Ivester Contemporary, which is, it's in the Canopy Complex. And I'm gonna be in the project space area, which is kind of, it's kind of a narrow space, and again, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to grow my scale, because I think it's just more conducive to like the shape of that space. More conducive than building a bunch of pedestal pieces. I think that would have been better for more of an open kind of square shaped gallery, but yeah, that's the next exhibit. I've got quite a bit of time to make work for that. Do you guys, if you guys want to be on my mailing list, I do let everybody know when my exhibits are coming up, or if I finish a batch of interesting work, sometimes I'll put together a newsletter and send it out. What else? I just let everybody know, you know, kind of what I'm up to. So if you want to sign up for my newsletter, you're welcome to do that. You can do that on my website. And my website is just my name. It's terragoolsby.com. And my Instagram page it's the same. If you know my name, you know how to find me online. And I have some business cards if you want to take some business cards. I have some postcards here too. And I think my website information is there and on the cards. And by all means, leave me with yours too. I absolutely love to look at your websites and see what kind of work you're doing. There are a lot of familiar faces in here, but there are also a lot of unfamiliar faces. And I would love to see what you guys make and what you guys do. So, yeah, I think that's it, unless you guys have some more questions. I might have. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
So,
a lot of your stuff seems to be influenced by like mythology and folklore and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Once you've created something, do you feel like it kind of is its own new folklore or has its own lore?
Yeah, I do, and I do feel like a lot of the subjects that I dig into, I dig into subjects that have to do with what I'm experiencing at the time. And I think that the Meso American myth is especially, it's the most interesting thing to explore. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that a lot of those stories are just gone. They're just erased, and it's evolved so much over time, especially when, you know, Western culture came over. A lot of it turned into something kind of nefarious or negative, and it's just interesting to see how those stories change over time. And I myself was kind of estranged from my own culture because we moved around a lot when I was a kid. So I was only around my mom's family, my Mexican family, for certain chapters of childhood. So I feel like it's an opportunity to reconnect with that and to braid my own stories in with it and come out with like some sort of understanding. So, yeah.
That's a great ending point.